What's going on, everybody? It's Kyle here again with Limitless Powersports Service and Repair. What I have here in front of us is a Massimo side-by-side. This is a 2014 MSU 800 V twin. Customer of mine, old customer of mine, actually. I replaced the clutch a while back in the belt for him. He said he was out riding one day and it just up and quit on him and wouldn't fire back up. He said he took it apart, done some troubleshooting, as you guys can see. And he believes it has no spark, and he doesn't remember if it had fuel pressure or not. So a few things we're going to run through. We're just going to hook up the scanner I have. I'll give you guys a description of that with part number and link down in the description below. And then we're going to check, make sure we have 12 volts to the battery, because this is a fuel injected unit, and 12 volts is crucial for fuel injection to run properly. So we'll definitely want to check charging once the thing's up and running. We'll check connections on the ECU over here, the relay box, and where all your fuses are. And I already tell he's got a ton of stuff hooked up to the battery. So we definitely want to check battery connections, find out what all that's running to. And of course, you know, we'll double check to make sure that we're actually having that problem. You always want to double check to make sure you're actually having the problem the customer's talking about. So we're going to check all that stuff. We'll go in depth with that. We'll show you how to troubleshoot this no start situation. And we'll go over quite a few things, and we'll break it down. So if you guys do run into this issue, you guys be able to troubleshoot it yourself and figure it out what's going on, all right? Let's get into this thing. All right, guys, like I said, the first thing we want to check, we're going to make sure we have 12 volts to the battery. I can already tell he has a ton of different stuff right now. He has put a radio in here. I think he's got a switch for a light bar, a few other things. This is as you can see, the ground is really overloaded with a bunch of different wires, and then also the hot is the positive. Also, you can see right now. Watch this. You see all that movement? That's not good on both sides. So he definitely doesn't have good connection on either one. He also does have a battery tender, which is a positive because one of his lights on a controller does stay on 24/7 because it's wired hot. But we want to make sure that we have 12 volts in this battery. Like I said, fuel injection is really dependent on your battery at 12 volts or very, very close to that to run properly. Of course, like I said, once we get it up and fired up and running, we figure out the issues. We also want to check the charging system to make sure it's charging at least, you know, 13, 8 at idle, and nothing more than 14.7 when we rev up the motor. Then you start to overload the battery. So let's get into this thing and see what we have as far as voltage wise here. All right, so what I got a Fluke multimeter, auto multimeter. It's the Fluke 115. We're going to turn it on to volts DC right here, second one over. There we connect the red, dropped it down there. The red to positive, the black to negative. You can do it reverse. You'll just have a negative reading instead of positive reading. So we'll set this thing right here for you guys. All right, let's see what we got as far as voltage wise goes. Right to the battery post. And right now we're showing 12.79, which is excellent. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to make sure that the negative and positive post, every connector on there is clean, no rust on it. And then check the ground strap that runs to the chassis or down here to the motor. Make sure that's all clean, and we got good grounds, and we got good connection on the battery, and we got good connection with the ground, because that's definitely would cause a problem if there's a... So we're going to go ahead and get the relay and fuse box out of the way. That way I have clean access to this. You guys are viewing this from the back of, like if you're this is from the back facing forward this way. About the best camera angle I could get on it right now. So we're going to get this relay box taken off here. We use this 8mm swivel on an extension. We'll get this up and out of the way, give it some better access here. We'll just slide it forward, let it sit here for right now. All right, like I was saying, if you can see, you can grab a lot of this stuff and just move it around. That's definitely not very good. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this off, we're going to check it all, sand it down, make sure everything is nice and clean, get good connection. We'll check the connectors at the ECU here, and then once again check the connections on the relay box, fuse box here. Make sure that's all nice and clean, because I know he said he has drove it in some water and stuff. So that's what we're going to get into right now. Oh yeah, they're super loose. All right, some of the biggest mistakes that could be made is your main cables to your wiring harness and to your motor ground and all that. Those should be the first ones connected to your battery post. That way they get the best connection. Those are the most crucial ones. They were put on here way after the stackable stuff for his radio, his light bar, a couple other small accessories he has on here. So we definitely want to check out and make sure that you have those first, and then you can add all your accessory stuff after the fact. Yeah, you can see he's got rust on some of his positive connections here. So we're going to clean those up and make sure he is good to go on that. Yeah, you guys can see these are some of the positive battery cables that he has for power for other accessories. You can see how rusted that is. His main power that runs to the starter solenoid is all rusted. The positive terminal is all rusted. The wiring harness, positive, all rusted. Some more stuff. Everything on the positive side is just corroded with rust. So we're going to go through, we're going to clean all his posts, clean off all his connectors. We're just going to probably use a little air grinder and use some scouring pads on it, a sanding disc, and knock that stuff out real quick. And we're going to check over a couple more things. And you can see right here, see that? That is also loose. That is not good. So we're going to have to run through quite a few things, see what all is loose and not connected very well in here. And that could be definitely the main source, is having loose connectors, loose nuts and bolts, corroded battery cables, corroded connectors. That causes a lot of resistance in the wiring harnesses and doesn't get the proper voltage for this thing to fire off and fuel injection to work right. So we're going to clean this all up and hook it all back up and see what we got. So I also seen these battery cable, battery bolts or nuts, what do you want to call them, they actually don't fit around the battery post properly. So another reason, as he's riding it, it could have just came loose and it doesn't make good connection, and the rest of the wiring does not make connection. So we're going to replace this with just your standard 20 millimeter long 6x10 with a 10 millimeter head on it. That way everything stays nice, tight, and secure. Stuff like this, if it doesn't fit, guys, it can move and come loose and cause all types of electrical gremlins, and you're just gonna go crazy. I also saw, just pull the starter solenoid out here, this, as you guys saw me trying to tighten up, just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. Definitely, it's probably stripped out down there. Gonna order a new one for him. Definitely don't want any loose connections anywhere. That's unfortunate. Just one more thing we find as we're diagging, just the battery and cleaning that up, so we could definitely test this thing and see what's going on once all the proper electrical stuff is secure. And then we'll put that in, and once we get this all together here momentarily, we'll turn it over and see if we have spark and throw the code reader on it and see what we got, see if there's any hidden codes in there, see if it has anything we can go off of to verify that. But like I said, I always want to check to make sure the battery has 12 volts and all the connections are good there before I even go to crank a unit over, because then you're just going to start, if you don't go over this first, you're going to go to start it or crank something over, and it's going to have really slow cranking, or just some crazy stuff can go on. Things can flicker and flash, and then you're definitely going to sometimes head the wrong direction. I always like to start here at the heart of the electrical and make sure the battery, like I said, has 12 volts and everything is clean, tight. That way we have no issues. I did end up getting the starter solenoid to tighten up. He had a battery cable, ran to the wire harness on there also. So I actually ran that just directly to the positive side of the battery. So what we're going to do here, we're going to crank it over, start it, see if it starts up, see if we're having those issues, and then we're going to plug in the OBD2 reader that we have for these. I'll leave a link for it in the description and we'll show that to you. It hooks up way down here to your Diag plug on this. Some are on the other side, some are up underneath the hood, depends on make and model of the unit. We'll plug into this. Alright, so what we're going to do now, we're going to plug into the Diag plug. Here is the part number, EFI diagnostic tool. It is made in China. Got it directly from Massimo. Right around 300 bucks. It does read regular OBD2 also. Here's a little unit, here's the plug, and they give you the adapter plug it on in here, and it has the adapter for these models. Some of the older ODES models have a little bit different plug. You can swap those around on the actual harness itself to make this work for the older model also. Down here's a Diag plug. You can see that way down here like I showed you a minute ago. We just unhook that. Dummy plug. Plug this in. You can see we get power. Definitely turn key on so we can access the ECU. We're going to go right here to motor OBD2. We're going to hit enter. Delphi OBD. And then try to get this thing to focus here a little bit for me. And then we're going to go read codes. It says the ECU has no faults in it. Well, that's no fun. That doesn't give us anywhere to start. So now we're just going to start troubleshooting. We'll check the spark plugs. We'll definitely check fuel pressure and make sure the injectors are working and all that good stuff. And we'll go from there. All right, we're going to pull the spark plugs real quick. See if those guys are fouled out or anything. And then we'll set it on the head and turn it over. See if we got fire. We're using a snap-on 5/8 spark plug socket. Got a snap-on wobbly extension, which is great when it comes to the backside. So we'll put these guys in here, yank it out. Spark plug is getting wet. It doesn't look too bad. You can see the spark plug's wet. Definitely a little black, but still really good shape. So we'll set that over here. We'll check this back one over here now. Which on this motor, this is actually cylinder 1, cylinder 2. They do have this shift linkage that does run kind of in the way. It makes it a little difficult at times, so that's why I like to use a wobbly extension on here. You can get a little bit of a different angle on it. This spark plug's wet too. Definitely a little cleaner than cylinder 2. So maybe run into issue with no fire on both, but I'm looking more towards cylinder 2 just because the cylinder number 2 is definitely a little more fouled out. So I'm just going to do the cheap, easy way. Just going to set it on here, make sure it's connected well. Set it on the head for a good ground, turn it over and see if we got spark. So I'm just going to do both of them. Check them both at the same time. We don't have spark. We may have an issue with ground. Could have an issue with the crank sensor down here. Could be an issue with the relay box, which the relays are not replaceable in there. The fuses are, but the relays aren't. So let's crank this over and see if we got any spark. All right, we got really good spark. So that is great to see, great to see. So we're gonna go on and put them back in. We're gonna crank it over one more time to see if she fires off. Then if not, I'm gonna check the crank sensor. We'll run a ohms test on it, and then we'll also check the connector to make sure it's connected really well. And then we'll do, also check ground to make sure it's not grounded itself out somewhere. All right, guys, brilliant me. I was going over a couple things, and I completely didn't notice that it didn't record. So just give you a little insight of what I've done so far. I went through and I pulled out the injectors, made sure that those are both firing fuel, make sure both wires had power when they're supposed to. All that is good. It is shooting fuel and both injectors are working fine. You saw we have spark in both cylinders. I did check the fuses in the relay box. Checked the relays, they all seem good when I tested those on the backside. Checked the plugs on the ECU, checked the plugs on the relay box. All those are nice and clean, no issues there. What I'm leaning towards, every now and then it does want to fire off on one cylinder. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do now, I am going to pop the valve covers off this thing and check timing. I have seen these things, cam chains, lose tension and go out of time on one cylinder, and they do not run right unless they are timed up perfectly. So that's the next thing we're going to check. So we're going to jump into that right now. We'll pull both of these off real quick and set each one to top dead center, and then rotate the motor over and make sure we're still about, I think it's 200 and, is it 260, 280? I'll have to double check on that one. Degrees on from front to rear, and we'll see what's going on with that. So we're gonna pull both spark plugs back out. That way everything rotates over really easy. And then we're gonna pull valve covers off and we'll check that. Once again, we can see that spark plug is wet on the second cylinder. Spark plug is wet on the number 1 cylinder. It's a 6mm Allen socket. I like to break things loose by hand, and then we could use our power tool. Definitely when you put one back in, guys, always start the threads first by hand, then use your tools, and then torque the proper torque spec. While we're in here, we're going to probably check the valve clearance too, just to make sure all that's good to go. But like I was saying, this guy right here, guys, this thing, it's amazing. I think I got it. I think it was right around $400. Good rechargeable battery, 70 pounds of torque, foot-pounds of torque. It works great to get in tight spots, especially when you're working on the UTVs and everything. It's definitely nice to have. All right. Just verifying the cam chains are still tight. None of the lobes are rounded off or anything like that. So I'm going to cheat the system here a little bit. I am going to bump it over with the key, just to turn it over slowly, check out, make sure to see what timing's at on it, and make sure we're good to go. I'll check cylinder number 2 first. I'll pull you guys off and let you take a look at it real quick. So as you can see, that little guy here and that little guy there will line up and be top dead center. So we're going to verify top dead center here by I'm going to shine a light down into the spark plug hole, see if the piston's at top dead center. Double check the cam lobes, make sure they're not pointed up at pushing any of the valves closed. Any of the valves open, I should say. My bad on that one. But it looks like we are all good there. And then valve clearances. I can definitely tell you this. Exhaust has got a smidge. Intake is definitely at 0. Definitely could have did a leak down on that just to verify before I did take this off. But it's pretty quick and simple. The access is really easy on these to get, just to bump over and double check everything. And I know the customer said he's never really had anything done to this as far as valve train check. So we'll have to definitely check the, reset the valve clearances real quick. And on the front, on the number 2 cylinder. And we'll get to that right now. The valve clearance on this thing is on a little placard underneath the front left fender up on the firewall. It's white. It gives you all the parameters. Tells you what the motor is, CC is, valve clearances, what type of oil to use, all the EPA stuff. So let's reset these valves real quick, and then we'll go to the number 1 cylinder in the rear. We'll check that out and definitely reset the valves on that too. Get all the valve clearances correct. All right, guys, we're gonna adjust the valves real quick. Like I said, it's on a little placard there. The valve clearance for the intake is 8 millimeters to 12 millimeters, which is basically 3 thousandths to 5 thousandths. And then the exhaust side is going to be 12 millimeter to 15 millimeter. That is what would be 5 thousandths to 6 thousandths. On the intake, I'm going to go right in the middle. But on the exhaust side, I'm going to go a little bit, I'm going to take the big side of it, because what happens over time, it's kind of hard to see from this camera angle I got going on here. The valve actually starts wearing into the bottom of this tappet. So at some point in time, you will have to replace these. It's pretty cheap. It's pretty cheap to replace, but like I said, you will start getting tighter. It's very rare. I have not found almost any of these Chinese motors with loose valves. Most of the time they actually come tight. I found brand new motors that I had taken open before just to check them new, because we were all having runnability issues when they started. The valves had zero clearance, and as soon as I redid the valves, the things ran great. So like I said, we're going to do the intake side over here. We're going to run it at 5 thousandths, and then the exhaust side, we're going to put it at 6 thousandths. So, and then I also have these cool little Tappet tools here. I got them off of Amazon. Pretty cheap. You know, they come in at 8 millimeter, 9 millimeter, 10 millimeter, and then one of them has a flathead. Another one has a large square and a small square. I think they're like 40 bucks. I've used them for quite a while. They're an amazing little tool. I definitely recommend that if you guys want to do your own work on these styles of motors, or even a lot of motors that have a tappet like this. These things just come in handy instead of trying to use a screwdriver like a 10 millimeter box end wrench or something like that. But I know right now we have pretty much zero clearance in the intake. We got a little bitty bit on the exhaust, but not enough. So I'm just gonna break them loose. I don't even care what the clearance is now, because I'm gonna set them all anyways, like I said. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that. And when you do this, guys, you want a little bit of drag. You don't want it to go in there super easy, but you also don't want it to pinch it. So this will go between the tappet and the top of the valve. You can see how easily it's moving. We want to tighten this down to where it's got a little bit of what some people call magnetic drag, which one of my teachers back in the day had said something about that. And he goes, oh, you want it to drag a little bit. And I was like, okay. But you definitely don't want it to wear. See, it's a little too tight where it won't come out. You'll never get in there to check the valve clearance. So we'll just back it up just a hair. Got a little bit of movement. We'll hold this in place, and then we'll tighten that up. One more time. Make sure she's tight. All right, and then make sure we got good clearance. And then what I'll do too, I'll grab another 6 thousandths one. It's a little bit bigger. See if it fits. And it does, so I need to tighten it up just a little bit more. Yeah, that one didn't sit right either. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 chances. Sometimes you get it right on the first try. It can be a little bit of a headache sometimes. I'll try 6 thou. Don't fit. We'll try the 5 thousandths. I adjusted that to make sure it still fits. Perfect. All right, we'll move on to the second one here. Do the same thing. We're gonna try the 6 thou in it again. Does not fit. Try the 5 thousandths I just adjusted it at. I like to double check. Perfect. All right, that's the intake side of the number 2 cylinder. We're gonna repeat the same process on the exhaust side, but we're gonna adjust it to 6 thousandths, and I'm gonna pull out a 7 thousandths just to double check it when I'm done. All right, there's a 6 thousandths. Grab the 7 thousandths. Make sure they're nice and clean before you try to slide them in. 7 thousandths, no go. Let's try the 6 thou again. Fits right in there, perfect. And on to the next one. Some of the angles can be a little bit difficult to get in sometimes. That's why I like these style. They get in anywhere really well. They work really well for a lot of the older motorcycles. Worked really well for the Triumphs on the exhaust side, and the cylinder 2 and 3 was really hard to get to at some weird angles, and having these thin ones like this made it so much easier. So I definitely highly recommend to get these. I think I got these through Parts Unlimited, and I think they were about maybe 50 bucks. I honestly don't remember, but I can definitely look it up and put another link in the description of what they are and where you guys can get them from. That's the 7th thou don't fit. We're gonna try the 6th thou again. And the 6th thou goes right on in there, no problem. So that head, all 4 valves, the intake and the exhaust, are adjusted. I'm going to clean off the little bit of sealant right here. Apply a little bit of new sealant. You always want to add a little bit of new sealant to that what we call the half moon on the valve cover, because it will leak oil out of there. Make sure this is all nice and smooth and clean, and put the head back on, and then we'll torque it down to 12 Newton meters. And we're going to repeat the process on the back so you guys understand how the front works. I'm not going to film the back. Same process in the rear. Set at the top dead center. Check the valve clearances, reset them, clean it all off, put sealant on it, put the valve cover back on. Another thing I want to talk about, is when you do clean this, you can use a rag and a little bit of brake clean. I recommend you put something down in here. You may not get 100% of it off in some spots, especially in the grooves, but you want to get most of it you can. On the valve covers, though, if you're going to reuse your valve cover gasket, which most of the time you can because, some holds their shape really well and don't leak, you definitely want to make sure you wipe it all dry, make sure there's no oil or anything on there, because if there is oil, even though oil does cool, lubricate, and seal, it can cause an oil leak around your valve cover. So we're just going to add a little bit to the edges right here, and right here, not a big glob, not huge beads like you'll see sometimes. You don't need that. You just need just a little bit on. Just put a little bit on your finger. I use Suzuki. I have a whole bunch of this stuff. Just put a little bit on there. You don't need a ton. And then just make sure you don't have any balled up or anywhere, any chunks or anything like that. And then just put some down here on the inside, nice and even. You don't want any of this to get into the motor, clog up any of your oil passageways, causing a catastrophic failure. So we have all that nice and neat. I've already dried off, cleaned off the valve cover gasket, and we're going to reinstall that. Make sure that on this particular one there is a groove that sets down in this half moon on the side. So make sure that groove sets back down in there. So we're going to put this back on here real quick, and we're going to torque this down to 12 Newton meters. With my fancy snap-on torque wrench. It is a digital one. It does Newton meters, foot pounds, inch pounds. Also use it for it's got angle on there. A lot of motors that I built in racing uses say 15 Newton meters on a rod bolt and nut, but anywhere from 175 to 185 degrees past, and then it'll show you the torque value at the end. And then we're going to set this. It's already preset at 12 Newton meters. One of my friends calls this the disco torque wrench, because it does have lights right here that will light up once you get to your torque, and it will vibrate in your hand when you're there also. So you probably see that see it lighting up. 10, 11, beep, 12, turns green, 12.2 Newton meters on that one. Anytime you guys if you put an extension on it long ways, you don't have to change, you don't have to do the but the math, the formula to preset the torque, because if you extend it out past here, the length of the torque wrench, that changes the torque value at the end. Then you have to do a formula to get that. And I don't remember what that is off the top of my head. I'd actually have to look that one back up. Almost there. And there we go. Like I said, guys, I'm not going to film doing the back. We'll skip that one. I'll do all the adjustments off camera, and we'll come back and we'll try to fire it up, and we'll see what happens, all right? All right, guys, you can see we got the rear cylinder back together. Spark plugs are in both. We're in neutral for the moment, and let's fire up, see what happens here. There we go. That is running on both cylinders. There we go. This guy had a valve lash problem. Being held open, wasn't getting proper compression, getting a lot of blow by, probably through the intake because they were being held open on both sides. The exhaust, a little bit on cylinder number 2 here. Cylinder number 1 was really close to being in spec, so I reset those, like I said. You know, I went through and checked all this other stuff out. You know, I did get a hold of the customer, like I said earlier, and he said he's never done any really maintenance to it, so that led me to believe valves. So there we go. Got this one knocked out. The valve lash was off. You know, we had good 12 volts. We redid a couple connectors down here for them. You know, I checked this off camera because I didn't realize it wasn't recording. Checked all the plugs on here, plugs on the ECU, plugs on the relays. Checked all the fuses in the fuse box here. Redid a couple eyelets for them, reset these up, put some new bolts in it. Checked fuel. I did check fuel pressure, it was good. And like I said, those things I actually did off of camera because I thought I hit record, which apparently I didn't hit record. And now you guys saw, check valve lash, put the spark plugs back in, fires up and runs. There we go. He'll be a happy guy to get this back. He said no rush, but he always says no rush, and he's super excited how fast we get it back to him. There we go, guys. This is a 2014 MSU 800 Massimo. Got any questions or comments? Any other ideas? Something you might have wanted me to do a little bit different? Some of us have different ways of diagging things. That's just how I like to start out. Like I said, he took it all apart, but we got this one knocked out. I got another 500 outside MSU 500. Maybe it's a little T-Boss 500. I'll have to look again. And then I have a Yamaha Rhino 660 out there, still waiting to be done. So we'll go through some step-by-step diag and stuff on those. All right, guys, again, this is Kyle with Limitless Powersports Service and Repair. We'll get back at you later. Peace.